Hello students, hope you all are fine, and in this session you are going to learn a very interesting topic. I am going to teach you in detail unit 17, reproduction in plants and animals, and it's going to be very interesting. Okay, first let me just move on to the introductory part now. What is reproduction, children? When you're talking about a reproduction, it is a definite process or it is a must process for each and every living organisms, because they have to produce their own offspring to the next generation. Okay, so new individuals are produced by this process so that there won't be any extinction. Okay, so when you talk about this reproduction, why should they need to undergo for reproduction? You can look at the picture here. A dog gives puppy, tree gives a plantlet. Yes, you can see a mango tree which gives a plantlet, the small mango plant. Again, a dog gives birth a baby. Why should they undergo for this particular process? Tell me now. So when you think about this, definitely when this particular dog matured, definitely one day they will die, and it has to continue its own species to the next generation. Yeah, that is called as self-perpetuation. So when they want to self-perpetuate their species to the next generation, self-perpetuate is nothing but to continue their species to the next generation, definitely they need to undergo for this process. Okay, is that clear? So each and every living organisms in this world will undergo for this particular process called reproduction, so that they will continue their species to the next generation. So let me just move on to the next topic of this particular lesson. Very interesting topic, children. When we talk about this particular topic, as I just now told you, the definition of reproduction and necessity of reproduction, then we have to think about the types of reproduction which are carried out in this world among living organisms. So types of reproduction, you definitely would have learnt it in 7th and 8th standard. Just a recollection, major types, 3 types. There are 3 types of reproduction which are just carried among living organisms, children. You all know very well. The first one is called vegetative. Here you can see the flow chart, vegetative reproduction. Second one is asexual, and the third one is sexual reproduction. Here under vegetative reproduction, you can question yourself, what is the difference between these 3? When we just talk about vegetative, you can just remember one word, vegetables. Yeah, that word you can just remember very well. Vegetable comes out on the ground, above the ground. So vegetative reproduction is nothing but the reproduction which is carried out by the parts of the plant which are above the ground. You can say stem, leaf, root, buds, etc. So these are the major parts from which a new plant will originate. Is that clear? So vegetative reproduction is nothing but the vegetative parts of a plant will give birth the new ones, will give birth the babies. Okay, so that's called as vegetative reproduction. Moving on to the second one, asexual reproduction. It is very easy for you to understand between asexual and sexual. So the name itself, asexual, absence of sexes. Okay, they produce special structures called spore. So these spores will give birth the new babies, new plants. Okay, so that is about asexual reproduction. Then moving on to the third one, sexual. Name itself tells you very clearly presence of sexes. Both male and female sexes will be present here, and they produce their gametes. So by the fusion of male and female gametes, new individuals are produced. Okay, let me just recollect everything. There are 3 types of reproduction you can come across in the living organism. One is vegetative reproduction, second one asexual, and the third one sexual reproduction. Vegetative, I told you, vegetative parts. You can just give examples, stem, leaf, buds, etc. Okay, and these will be growing further and they give birth the babies, new plant. The second one, absence of sexes, spore formation, that is a method of asexual. Third one, you have sexual reproduction, where definitely both male and female sexes are involved and definite fertilization takes place in that case. Okay, this is about the types of reproduction. Now let me just move on to each type of reproduction in detail. You are going to learn, okay, with so many examples. Definitely it's going to be very interesting, so listen carefully, children. First one, vegetative reproduction. When we talk about the vegetative reproduction, look at the diagram given in the slide. It takes place through so many methods. Okay, just let me give you example. Vegetative parts are nothing but which are just present above the soil, on the ground. So here you can see the leaves, you can see the stems, yes, and also some of the tuberous roots will come, and you have the fourth method, bulbils. Okay, so there are 4 types of vegetative reproduction you can come across in plant kingdom. The first one, leaves. You look at the diagram here. Bryophyllum, a beautiful diagram I have given here for your reference. You can see the leaves of the bryophyllum, where you can see small notches. You see these notches are nothing but the edges of the leaf. Make a note of it. Each leaf you have notches, yeah. Notches are nothing but furrows along the corner of the leaf. So from that notch, a bud-like structure, a small bud-like structure will come. That will be cut off from the main plant and that will fall on the ground and that will grow as a new bryophyllum. Okay. So in bryophyllum, you can come across leaves are taking part, are just producing notches, and from these notches, and when they mature, when they fall on the ground, definitely each bud or each notch which are just coming out of the main leaf will give rise a new plant. So that is a method of vegetative reproduction. Here you can come across only leaves play a very, very important role in the case of bryophyllum. Second one, stems. Here you can see the diagram, strawberry. So when you see the strawberry plant, what happens? Here also vegetative reproduction only is carried out. How does it happen here? When you talk about this particular strawberry, the stems which are very weak, okay, this is a main strawberry plant, definitely they'll have many stems, yeah, the main stem will give out a lot of branches, and in that whichever is a weak stem, that will just go on the ground. That's what you can come across a word in your textbook, aerial weak stem. Aerial is nothing but on the ground, okay. The weak stem of the main plant of the strawberry will be just lying down on the surface of the ground. Later on, they give out adventitious roots. You can see the roots with lot of fibers, yeah. So adventitious roots will be given out from that weak stem, and from that adventitious root, a small bud will be given off, okay. When the bud arises, after some time, the bud will be originating as a new plant, and automatically they will detach from the mother plant and they will lead a separate life, okay. This is how in strawberry through stems reproduction is carried out. Is that clear? So that's the second type of vegetative reproduction. Then the third one, you can come across a beautiful diagram of asparagus. These are all not there in your textbook. You can make a note of it, your children. Roots. Look at the roots. Roots also part of a vegetative reproductive method. Look at that. In the roots, I just now told you adventitious root, and you would have learnt about taproot in carrot in 6th standard. Here you can come across a special types of root system in the diagram, where you can see tubers. Tubers in Tamil, you say kerangu, yeah, urlai kerangu, like here we have sweet potato, sakkaravalli kerangu, yeah. So this particular diagram, what I have given here is asparagus. You can see the roots, and you can come across the roots are not like thin or hair-like structure. Here and there you can come across tubers. Tubers are formed among the roots, and each tuber will just absorb the nutrient from the soil. Whichever the tuber is growing or receiving more nutrients will come out as a new sapling, a new plant, a new asparagus. Same way you can come across in sweet potato. Look at the diagram. Sweet potato also, the main plant is there, and you see the root system. One of the particular fiber of the root will be giving a tuber-like structure. That tuber will be attaching itself to the ground and absorb nutrients from the soil, and later on this will detach from the mother plant and it will give rise to a new one. So that's called as a offspring. Is that clear? So roots are playing a major role in this particular examples. You can see the asparagus as well as sweet potato. Only roots are taking part in this reproduction. Hence it is also a type of vegetative reproduction. Coming to the next one, bulbils. From the name itself you can guess. You can just look at the diagram here. Agave. Agave is a plant where you can come across lot of bulbils, globe-like structure. You know, round shaped structures in the diagram you see, and these round shaped structures only in your textbook you can come across about globose, and these globose are named as bulbils, and each globose will be cut off or they just pierce out from the mother plant and they will be originating as a new plant. So in the case of agave, new plantlets grow from a bud at the base of a flower bud, okay. So the small bud, small round shaped structure, globose shaped structure will be forming in between the, what you call it as flowers. So these buds will be just absorbing the nutrients from the main plant, after which they detach, fall on the ground and they come out as a new agave plant. Here we have bulb shaped structure, yeah, are taking part in this reproduction. So this is called bulbous type of vegetative reproduction, and I hope it is very clear. Let me move on to the other types of vegetative reproduction, children, now. The first one is fragmentation. Fragmentation, easy to understand. Fragments. Fragments means bits. Suppose if I give you a long stick asking you to cut into pieces, you will be breaking into pieces, isn't it? That piece is called as a fragment. Okay, here you can come across in the slide a picture of Spirogyra. Spirogyra diagram also I have given, which you can see in the pond water, which will be floating on the surface of the pond, rivers and all, children. It is an algae actually. So how does this Spirogyra undergo vegetative reproduction? Is by fragmentation. The mother Spirogyra, which is just a thin filamentous structure, will be just cut off into pieces. That pieces are only named as fragments, and each one will be developed into a new Spirogyra. You understand? So mother Spirogyra will be cut off into 2-3 pieces, sometimes 4 pieces, and each piece will be having a small nucleus along with the cytoplasm, and this each bit, which is known as a fragment, will be cut off from the mother plant or be moving out from that area, and they lead an independent life. You understand? So mother Spirogyra will be cut into fragments, and each fragment will be developing or just forming into a new baby, nothing but new Spirogyra. So this is called as fragmentation. Second type you can come across here is fission. Fission is also a well-known example to you children. From 6th standard you are learning about amoeba, unicellular organism, amoeba, and as you all know very well, the body is made up of only one cell. So what happened during their favorable condition, when the ponds and pools are flooded with water, immediately the mother amoeba will be just cut off. They form constriction in the center. You can see the diagram. The mother amoeba, which is an irregular shape, they constrict in the middle. You see the constriction which is taking place in the center, and slowly it goes inwardly and it will be just cut off into 2 pieces. This is called fission. Fission is nothing but division. A parent body will be divided into 2 halves. Each half will be developed into a new amoeba. Do you understand? Fission is nothing but division. Mother or the parent body will be just divided into 2, and this 2 halves, each half will be developing into a new amoeba. So thereby this particular method is called as fission. Third one, budding. Budding, from the name itself you can guess, buds will be formed. Very good example here you can come across in the diagram itself, yeast cells. Yeah, mother yeast. Again, these are also taking place in their unfavorable condition. They form some buds, small protrusion. So the mother will be just forming small protrusion outside. Whichever the protrusion is taking more food, more nutrients from the mother yeast, will grow as a big bud. And after some time, when they get the favorable condition, when is their favorable condition? Moist air. That is a season for them. So immediately the bud which is attached with the mother yeast will be cut off from the mother, and they fall on the suitable substratum like soil, and they grow as a new yeast. You understand? So yeast is a very good example for this particular mode of reproduction, where they form buds on the mother yeast, and each bud will be developing or growing on the mother yeast itself. Once they grow big, once they mature, and again you can just come across this diagrams. There are 1 or 2, 3, 4 buds are there. So depends on the food present in the mother yeast. Okay, suppose if the mother is having very less food, and that will be distributed to only one baby, means only one bud you can come across. So this bud will be attached with the mother yeast, and after some time it will detach and grow as a new individual. So this is budding. Then the next one is regeneration. The lost parts, the parts which are lost from the mother planaria. Planaria is a very good example of this particular regeneration method of reproduction, children. Planarians, you see, they are called as flatworms. So what happened during their unfavorable condition? The mother planaria will be just cut off into 3 pieces. You can come across the head, middle piece and the tail piece. Again the head region will regrow the tail. The middle piece, that will regrow the head region and also the tail region. These are called as lost parts. And the last tail region, you see, the tail region will grow again the head region. So from a single planaria, you get 3 planarians regrowing, redeveloping the lost parts which are not there in their body. So when the mother body is divided or cut off into 3 or 4 pieces, whichever the parts are missing, that will be regrown by this organism. Hence it is called as regeneration method of vegetative reproduction. Is that clear? Yes. Now let me move on to the second type. I hope vegetative reproduction is very clear, children. main types as well as the other types I taught you so far. Here is the next type of reproduction, children. As I told you, very easy method, asexual reproduction, absence of sexes. Okay. So when the sexes are absent, now will they go for the reproduction? That will be your doubt, isn't it? So they form special structure called spores. As I told you, spores are special structures which will be just formed when they are in unfavorable condition. What is called as unfavorable condition? When there is no rainfall, scarcity of food, when they don't find that environment is not suitable for them, that time what happened? This example rhizopus diagram in your textbook you can come across. The body of the rhizopus is given here as hyphae. Okay, hyphae are nothing but the mother body, which is made up of mycelia, like minute hair-like structure. And this mother rhizopus will produce a long stem-like structure. You can come across here. That's why I have just given in the flow chart. Fungal hyphae, the mother hyphae, mother hyphae is nothing but the body of the rhizopus. It's a fungus, okay. This will form a what you call minute growth outside, and one such growth will be elongated and it grow as a stalk, round shaped bodies, and this body is called as spores. Okay, inside the spores, so the sporangium is just nothing but like a round shaped structure inside which many spores are formed. So many spores will be enclosed inside a sporangium. Now what happened? During the favorable condition, the outer coat will be burst and each spores will be liberated out on the ground, and whichever spore is very active, that spore will be coming out as a new rhizopus. Is that clear? So as I told you, rhizopus is a fungi which will give out a long stem-like structure, sporangiophore. Yeah, the stem is called a sporangiophore, and the sporangiophore will be ended up with a round-shaped structure called sporangium. This sporangium is a round-shaped structure. When you cut and see or open and see, it will have lot of spores. Okay, the spores are all will be formed during unfavorable condition. Okay, then when condition is favorable, when there is a rainfall and then they get enough food, what happen? The sporangium will burst and liberates all the spores on the ground, and each spore will be just coming out as a new rhizopus. Is that clear? That is about the asexual reproduction. Moving on to the last type of reproduction, children, sexual reproduction. As I mentioned earlier, sexual reproduction is nothing but the involvement of sexes, both male and female. Sex organs are present, and here you can come across in the plants, especially male flowers and female flowers. So flowers are playing a very important role in sexual reproduction. So here we have a very interesting topic on different parts of a typical flower. Okay, so when we talk about the different parts of the typical flower, because as I just now mentioned, sexual reproduction, involvement of male and female sexes. So definitely you will have to learn about the flowers in detail, because they are the sex organ of a plant, okay, through which new offsprings will be produced by the process of pollination and fertilization. So before going into the detail of pollination and fertilization, let me teach you the parts of the typical flower in detail. Here you can come across a beautiful diagram. So now observe me and listen what I am going to teach you now, okay. Here I have a beautiful flower of hibiscus, and also you can come across the flow chart on the slide. And each flower is made up of 4 major parts: calyx, corolla, anuricium and gynoecium. Here I have calyx. Calyx I will show you. This green part which you can come across here is called as calyx. Can you understand, children? Calyx are nothing but they are forming the first whorl of the flower. What do you mean by whorl? Is row. You can see here, this is the typical flower of hibiscus, and here we have the first whorl, W-H-O-R-L. Whorl is nothing but row. The first row of the flower is made up of calyx. So when you talk about the calyx, you can just see here, calyx is green in color and they are made up of sepals. Each lobe is called as sepals. So calyx is made up of sepals, and the sepals joined together, it gives this appearance, complete structure of calyx. And when you talk about this calyx, what is the function of calyx? Here we have, it is an outermost whorl. You can see the diagram, children. Calyx beautifully given here, and each lobe is called as sepals, okay, and they are green in color. And so when you ask me the question, what is the function of it? It always encloses the bud. The bud is enclosed inside. So calyx, they form the first whorl of the flower. They are green in color and they consist of sepals, and they enclose always the buds. Okay, this is about the calyx. Now let me just move on to the second part called as corolla. Corolla, here I have different petals. Corolla is made up of petals. You can see differently colored petals are here. Here I have red color and here I have pink color petals. So when you talk about the calyx, this forms the second whorl of the flower. Calyx I told you first whorl. Now we are moving to the corolla. Corolla forms the second layer, children. See, second whorl of the flower, and it is brightly colored to attract insects for pollination. So they are brightly colored. They are made up of petals. First one I told is sepals. Now here you have petals. So corolla is made up of petals. They are also brightly colored to, as I told you, to attract butterfly, moth and beetles, etc. for pollination. Okay, that is a function, and they are differently colored. You can come across different bright colors in the case of petals. Now we will move on to the Anuricium. So here I have a dissected flower where you can see the structure of Anuricium. When we talk about the Anuricium, this is considered to be the male part of the flower. Here we have a beautiful diagram where you can come across male organ of a plant. Male sex organ of a plant is called Anuricium. When we talk about this Anuricium, it consists of stamens. You can see here, children, stamens. This part is called as stamens. And when you just take one stamen, you can look at the diagram there on the slide, only one stamen, which is considered to be the male sex organ. It is made up of two important parts. One is called as anther at the top, inside which you can come across yellow color pollen grains. You can see here. See, these yellow color pollen grains are called male gamete. They are only the male gametes. Very, very important for reproduction. So these male gametes, which are nothing but pollen grains, are present inside that anther region. Then you can come across one small stalk or stem-like region. That is called as filament. This part is called as stamen, and take off one stamen, view under the microscope. Each stamen is made up of two important parts. The upper region, you can come across bean-shaped structure called anther, and the basal region you can come across here as a small stem-like structure which is called filament. So anther and filament is called a stamen. Stamens are very, very important, considered to be the male sex organ of a plant. And this anther, when you cut and see the anther, inside they have male gametes which are just yellow in color. Here you can come across. These are called as pollen grains which are present inside the anther region. So during fertilization, this anther will burst out, liberate the male gametes into the ovary or ovule. You understand? So this is a very, very important part of the typical part of a plant. Now moving on to the gynoecium. Gynoecium, you will have to just dissect this flower. You can come across basal region of this particular flower. You can just come across a swollen part which is nothing but ovary. Yeah, ovary. When you just cut open this male organ, inside you will have a stem-like structure, long, thin filamentous structure. That is called a style. You can look at the diagram there. Ovary, style and stigma, feathery stigma. You can see here the stigma is protruding out. So when you just cut open this particular region, you can just see, when you just break open this outer layer, definitely your teachers would have shown you in the lab practical part. I will just try to open it now. Here we have. So you can come across a long style. So like this, thin filamentous, you see here. At the base, you will have a swollen part which is taken off here. Here you have ovary, style and stigma. Okay, you can come across the diagram also. So this is considered to be the female part of a typical flower, which is again made up of the swollen region. At the base is called ovary, and a small stem-like structure is called style, and ended up with the stigma. So ovary, style, stigma together called as female sex organ of a plant. So when I taught all these details, I can just conclude this parts of a typical flower by saying two important words. The parts of a typical flower is broadly divided under two categories. One is called non-essential organs, other one is called essential organs. As I was teaching you, calyx and corolla, they don't play much role in reproduction. So calyx and corolla are considered to be non-essential parts of the plant. Indirectly, they involve in reproduction. But here in the case of Anuricium and Gynoecium, directly they involve in reproduction because they have the sex organ, they have the sex gametes. Okay, so they are called as essential parts. So you can broadly divide the parts of a flower into two types. One is called essential parts, another one is called non-essential. Non-essential, you can just tell calyx and corolla are considered to be non-essential because they do not directly take part in reproduction, whereas Anuricium and Gynoecium are called as essential organs or essential parts of a particular flower because they do take part in reproduction. Is that clear? Now you can see here the pollen grains are stuck on my finger, children. So these are the pollen grains, and when you just take one pollen grain which is yellow in color, children, keep it under the microscope. This is the diagram which you can come across in the slide here. Structure of a pollen grain. Just now I mentioned, children, very important male gamete. So Anuricium is made up of, as I just now mentioned, stamens, yeah, anther and filament. Inside the anther only pollen grains are there. Now we are going to learn about pollen grain in detail. So when you just take this one yellow color part, see here, these are pollen grains, and these pollen grain is kept under the microscope. You can see the enlarged diagram like this. So each pollen grain is made up of two layers. One is called as exine, another one is called as intine. Exine is an outermost covering. You can come across in the diagram here, children. Exine means present as an outer covering. So exine is very hard and you can see very rough. They are not smooth, very rough. And in the center, no, they have a small hole called germ pore. This is very important. Next to the layer of exine, you have intine, very soft, and you can see there thin membranous structure. Okay, now when we just talk about this internal composition of a pollen grain, that is very important, children, because they are only going to take part in reproductive cycle. So when we talk about the mature pollen grains, it is divided into two regions. First region is called as vegetative region. Second one is called as generative region. Otherwise, you can say vegetative cell and generative cell. Vegetative cell, it is of no use in future. They will have a small nucleus, and when reproduction is carried out, this vegetative cell will disappear. Whereas here, lower part is called as generative cell. They are very important because they have two male gametes. Okay, we consider as sperms. So now once again, the center part of the pollen grain is divided into two halves. The upper half is called as vegetative cell and the lower half is called as generative cell. Vegetative cell will have only nucleus. Later on, they will disappear. Whereas the lower half is called as generative cell, which is very important part because it has two male gametes which are going to take part in reproductive cycle. Okay, this is about the pollen grain structure, children. So children, I think today's class was very interesting, and I was teaching you from the beginning what is reproduction type. Definitely would have understood clearly, children. Just go through the topic which are completed and have a nice time, and I'll meet you all in the next session. Thank you.